Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me, Alex Chisnell, here at the Festival of Enterprise for our first live webinar today. I'm joined by Craig McAvoy, who is in Warwick. Good morning to you, Craig.
Good morning, Alex.
Thank you all for joining us. It is another scorcher down here. Let us know where you are tuning in from. I'm in Poole in Dorset. Craig's in Warwick. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. It's scorching here as well.
I think it's a countrywide thing, and then it's all going to change tomorrow. Brief as brief can be. Yes, well, thank you all for joining us. So today we're going to be talking how your brand can bounce back from a pandemic. Just to give you some information about what we're going to be covering. You know, this pandemic has clearly caused a whole massive disruption in a relatively short period of time, a couple of months, maybe 3 months now, forcing us to change the way all of our businesses interact with customers, prospects, and employees to ways we couldn't have remotely imagined only a few short months ago. So the ways in which brands behave in this period of crisis and the months that follow can be the difference between ones that survive and thrive when this is all over, because it will be over, or one that causes its own demise because of its actions. So how are you going to ensure your brand falls into the former, and what things can you avoid doing in order to keep your reputation and loyal fans? So Craig is going to provide us with some tips you can implement in your business immediately to protect your brand, as well as ways in which you can strengthen its reputation despite operating in these challenging conditions. Craig's founder and chief experience officer at Beyond Brands. He's got over 20 years experience of working with some of the most recognizable brands in the world: John Lewis, BMW, LV, Mercedes-Benz, Direct Line, to name but a few. So clearly a leading authority in this space. And I'm going to hand over to Craig and focus the presentation. Boom, as if by magic, there it is. Thank you for joining us. Those of you who are posting up, thank you, Sarit, who is coming in from Bangalore in India. I bet you it is scorching there. But rainy season indeed. Awesome. Please, everybody join in. And just to let you know, as those of you watching on social, we are streaming this live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. So if you do want to come and interact, all you need to do is head on over to festivalofenterprise.co.uk, register for this webinar, and then you can jump in here with Craig and I. But if you happen to be lying on a beach and watching this on your Facebook live, then I'm not going to take you away from that. I'll let you watch it on there. Common questions I get is, when's the replay going to be available? Because people register for this and more people watch it on the replay when it suits them, obviously, rather than during the course of a working day. So if you are watching this, the replay is literally going to be available as soon as we end the broadcast afterwards. It literally takes about 10 seconds to reload. Likewise on social media as well. It will be available straight away on replay on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube as well. So look, how your brand can bounce back from a pandemic. Questions relating to that or commentary that you got. If you want to drop your LinkedIn profile to network whilst you're on here, pop that all in the chat box, which is down in the right-hand corner of this page. Any questions, any commentary, any connections you want to pop in there, I do encourage that. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Craig, and he's going to be talking about how your brand can bounce back from a pandemic.
Thanks, Alex. And you've done most of my introduction, so I don't really need to say much about these opening few slides. So you've mentioned a little bit about myself and who I've worked with, so I'll skip past that part. I have got a book for those people who are interested in reading further. So there's the book is called Beyond Brand and talks about why you can fall in love with a brand through the experience you get, rather than actually just physically what the brand is in terms of its look and feel. So you can get that. It's available on Amazon as well. So let's talk about the pandemic, because that's actually what we've been going through. I'm sure it's all we've been going through, and it's probably all we've been talking about. So I just want to start by talking a little bit about how we manage and react to something like the pandemic. And some of you may have seen this before, the Kubler-Ross change curve, which talks about how we go through this whole emotional journey of taking us all the way from shock back through the way till we get to integration of a new norm. And there's a saying that we've probably heard quite a bit recently as well. So I'll talk a little bit about that and where the pandemic has sat us in this change curve, as well as the various stages that we're going through. What's important to realize, I guess, is that we all go through this change curve at different speeds and at different times, and therefore it's really tricky for brands in order to make sure that you take your audience along the journey with you. So it's a really important part to understand how you can connect with people as you go through this stage, and also to make sure that there is some overlap between the stages so that you're bringing in the different people along the way as well. But let's see how the pandemic has probably impacted us in these early stages. We went through this shock phase, didn't we? I don't think I've ever seen a supermarket like this before in my life. You must be really gutted, by the way, if you've got that product that's left on the shelf. It must give you no end of worry that that's the only thing that people didn't want to buy. So we went through the whole piece of overstocking on toilet rolls and pasta and all the rest of it. As we went through this shock phase of, oh my God, we're going to have to bunker down now, and we could be in this for some time. And then in this denial phase, this first phase, it's almost like you don't want to believe it's true. So we're seeking that information, and we tend to get that from the press or the media or wherever our trusted sources are. But of course, we also get the non-filtered. So we get all the things that are not necessarily telling us the best of outcomes, just all the bleakest. But we're searching at this stage in denial for all of the information because we're in so much shock. We don't really know what's going on. As that progresses into the frustration phase, it's more about being informed by supported people that you trust. And depending on whether you have had a good experience or not, depends on whether you trust this man. But we were given briefings on a daily basis. That became our new expectation of what was going on in the world as we started to exist in our own homes, and that was our only existence really, were our own homes and gardens and families. So we got to spend a lot of time not surrounded by anybody else apart from the internet and trusted sources, but we're reaching out really in the frustration phase to be informed about what's going on. As that settles into what we call a depression phase, you're looking for sources of inspiration. And what we did get to see quite a few of these rise up from nowhere. So the likes of Barbour and Burberry and Louis Vuitton moving themselves away from their luxury goods and starting to do things that made a difference to the NHS. You know, making gowns, making gloves, making washing bags, and we also got to see diversity in terms of what people offer in other areas. You know, BrewDog making beer one minute and then hand sanitizer the next. So lots of diversification and people starting to look at how they can help by moving away from their core proposition, which was great to see. And then we had the experimentation phase, which is where people start to think, well, I can't stay here forever. We've got to find something different to do in terms of how we approach things. And we've seen some really great examples of this shining through. We've seen the opposite. We've seen people bury their heads in the sand. But actually, people like these Secret Cinema, if any of you have ever gone to one of their events, are fabulous. You know, they have a theme of a particular film, and everyone goes dressed as the cast and acts out what that film may be whilst you're at the event. So as a live event, they're fantastic to go to. But of course, live events have stopped, and events and hospitality has kind of just stopped entirely in this phase, and we don't really know how long that will take for events to get going again. Certainly large events are going to be some time. So what Secret Cinema did is they worked with one of their sponsors, Haagen-Dazs, and they introduced something called Secret Sofa, which if you've not seen or experienced, please do have a go on it. It's every Friday, and what they do is they pick a theme for that particular day or for that event, and that virtual event is a film, and then you join via Zoom and act out certain scenes along with hundreds of other people. I mean, this is the first event they did, which was an 80s themed event, if you were trying to crack what it was you were seeing on screen. And they had over 600 people logging in on Zoom to join this party, which had some amazing things. They even had a dance-off live on Zoom. So really starting to experiment with what you can do, how you can do things differently, rather than pushing your head right in the sand and hoping that this will just pass you by. And then we get into the decision phase, which is where people start to say, this is what we're going to do. This is the status that we've chosen, and this is how we're going to survive. And of course, as we said, the hospitality phase sector is really, really struggling right now. But people like Oakman Inns have started to say, this is how we're going to operate in a safe manner. And of course, the whole of the country rose in some form of joy when Boris made his announcement this week that the pubs will finally open and people can go back to socialising. It will be a very different kind of norm, but I'm sure that will help to A, save a lot of businesses in that sector, but B, give us some kind of normality and touch points with our previous norm as well at the same time. So as we go into this phase now, this decision phase, which is where we're coming out of what we would class the support phase, and now we're looking for inspiration. So we're saying we're coming out of this really challenging situation. We've been in it for some time now. And what we want are people to inspire us and brands to inspire us. And how can they come with us as we go on that journey? What we're seeing a lot now is that the search terms that people are searching for are looking longer term. They're not looking at right here, right now, what's happening today, how do we get through today, what's the next phase? They're looking for future. They're looking to plan as to things to look forward to. So what does it all mean for brands? Well, first of all, let's have a look at what the definition of brand really is. And I can't think of anyone who's put it in a better way than Jeff Bezos, with saying your brand is what other people say about you when you are not in the room. So brand, often mistaken for branding, which is a very important part of brand. The identity and the look and feel of a brand is very important, don't get me wrong. But brand is much bigger than that. It's much bigger than that. It's your personality of your business coming through and how you are thought of by people, not just your customers, but everybody who has an opinion about your brand. And we break brand down into 3 specific areas. So we have brand proposition and strategy, which is really the way you connect your brand and your business to the world. It's why you exist. It's what makes you different from everybody else. And it's, if you fell off the face of the earth tomorrow, would anybody care? Or would they just go choose someone else? Because if the answer to that is the latter, then you've really got some work to do. We'll talk some more about Me Too brands, but certainly the proposition that we work on, the strategy is about how to make you different, how to make you stand out, how to make you a brand that people associate with very, very quickly. And of course, we then move into brand comms, which is about how you tell the world about your brand, why you can't live without it, why it's going to change your whole life by choosing this brand, why you can't live without it. And everyone's fighting for the attention on that space. And That covers everything from PR and marketing and internal, external comms. All of those factors come into the brand comms piece. And then finally, the brand experience is about how does it actually feel when you interact with that brand, when you touch that brand. You know, is it good? Is it bad? Is it ugly? Is it inconsistent? Is it different across different channels? But all of those things really matter when it comes to looking at the experience, because we fall in love with the experience that we get. We emotionally connect to a brand at that point, and then everything else that comes before it just layers on top of it and gives us a way of short-circuiting our thoughts as to what we associate with. So that's what we mean by brand. And then we put people into one of four quadrants in terms of loyalty. And this is really a subliminal way that people associate with brands. So the loyalty matrix is about how much time we spend with a brand and how much pleasure it gives us. Because we want different amounts of both of those things depending on what type of brand it is and why we choose it. So first of all, we have the zombies, which are in the bottom quadrant there. Hopefully none of you guys fall into the zombie category, but these are the people that take up all of our time and give us no pleasure whatsoever. We have no choice but to use them. They're like the living dead. So we don't have any other alternatives, but as soon as someone comes along to make that experience better for us, we will be gone in an instant. So to give you examples, it's the car insurance renewal or your passport application or anything where you're trapped in using just that single service. It could be your water supply, your utilities. So it's about how do you make that more that experience better and more pleasurable so that you move out of that category. If you still have low pleasure, but you reduce the amount of time that you spend with people, then that's where these convenience brands come into effect. And there's no one better at that than Amazon. You know, nobody's fallen in love with Amazon, but we fall in love with the solution that it brings us. So we get to deal with things really quickly. It's on our doorstep tomorrow. That's why a quarter of the population are Amazon Prime subscribers, because it makes it easy. I can just go online, it's dealt with. I'm back to doing things that I want to do, the things that I want to spend time doing. And then we have the radical indulgence brands, which it's like our guilty pleasure. It's the little things that we do to give ourselves a reward. Things like a new outfit or our favourite pub meal or restaurant or bar, or an experience that we give ourselves just to give us that little bit of a reward for getting through the day. So those things are really important right now, and especially important moving forward depending on what happens in the economy. Finally, we've got the entertainment brands. So these are people where you want to spend the maximum amount of time with them because you get huge amounts of pleasure, so you never want that experience to end. It's the event you go to, the festival that you just think is amazing. It's a Disney holiday. It's where the magic happens, and you don't want that to end. So everybody falls into one of those brands. Interesting to see what you think in terms of your own brand and where it fits in there. And what we really look to achieve is this pulsation to the outer regions of those corners, because the closer you get to the extent of those far corners, the more loyalty you will get. The more easy you make it as a convenience brand, the more loyalty you get. The more pleasure you give in the time that you're allowed in an entertainment brand, the more loyalty you'll get. So it's about pushing those boundaries and making yourself strong in the areas that will really drive loyalty to you as a brand. And we work on the brand promise. I'll be able to supply some of these slides for you, so don't worry too much about this. But what we look for with a brand is how can we really get to the base of why you exist and what makes you different. And we do that by looking at your purpose, your mission, your vision, values, your behaviors, your goals, and then really crucially, what is the USP that makes you different from anybody else? Otherwise, you will fall into that Me Too brand category. And when you're a Me Too brand, really what happens there is a race to the bottom line. You're a commodity. You're not offering anything any different to anybody else, and therefore it becomes a price-driven transaction. What we're really looking to do is to make this emotionally connecting with a brand. And then, as if it wasn't hard enough, to do that in a small slogan that goes with your brand name, so that people associate it. And some people get that right really well. You know, Nike would Just Do It is probably the best example that you can think of with there. You've got Apple with Think Differently, or Think Different. So that's, in a nutshell, those are the things that we would first advise for you to get a grip of. But what about this new norm that everybody is now talking about, and how should brands be transitioning into this new norm? Well, what is it that's next? We now know that the country is opening up, but actually we've just gone through this whole pandemic period of uncertainty, and we're in this state of a little bit of unknown right now, and therefore we don't want too big a shock. We don't want things that are going to send us straight back to how things were beforehand. There's quite a bit of a transition period now in terms of where we're moving to, and similar to phobias that people have, you need to do that gently and transition people from where they've just come from in this pandemic across to their new norm. So there's a theory that you can use with things like phobias, and spiders are the biggest phobias. So exposure therapy is about think of a spider, draw a spider, be in the same room as a spider, then finally hold a spider. So the journey of removing that fear is spread across a number of different times and a number of different events. And that's exactly what you're going to need to do now as a brand as you move out of this pandemic period and into a period where we're not locked down. But people are going to be gently looking to move from where they are now out of this period. And that's going to need you as a brand to take them with you on that journey. So whether that is your marketing will now change to show people how you're going to be doing business differently, to show people how you're going to be doing it safely, to show people how they can interact with you in a different way whilst removing that fear of this pandemic that's still live, still out here. And until we get a vaccine, there's going to be this fear factor. So you've got to take people on that journey with you, and help them to understand how you're moving them through this new norm. And your communications need to be caring and gentle along the way. In the previous months, I've spoken about how you really cannot move people with any direction of sales right now. All of your communications should not be about selling, because people don't want to be sold to right now. They're not in the right frame of mind to be sold to. And there's varying differences of brands that have got this right and wrong. You know, from the scars of Sports Direct and Witherspoons, now even in brands like Go Outdoors or Village Hotels, really pushing too hard. And that's not where you want to be. You want to be in this caring comms space. And one of the brands that have got this really right, I think, is Nivea. So if you've not seen their campaign, which is about share the care, then I got a video here for you to take a look at, because I think this really encapsulates where we are right now.
When the night has come and the land is dark, and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand up by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. Whenever you're in trouble, won't you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me.
So Nivea there with their adverts that they're now pushing out there, and not until the last minute do you see anything to do with their brand, let alone their product. But I think it really encapsulates all of the things that we've been going through right now. And what that's doing is connecting that brand with the association of the life event that we've just gone through. And we subconsciously do this. We associate brands with a negative or a positive when we go through a life event. And that's what this pandemic has been, is a life event. So disproportionately, if you've done things in a not great way as a brand in this period, then people will remember that for a long time. Yes, in the end, they may go back to some form of previous normality, but that could take 18 months, 2 years before that happens. So really conscious about how you're behaving in this period and being where people are right now in terms of what they're thinking. And that will move now into this space around what they're craving. So we've seen this en masse when things that previously were just there at all times for us, but had been taken away from us, you know, like the McDonald's reopening, where people are queuing around the block just to get through the drive-through, and then they remember about 3 hours later when they've got stomach cramps why they probably don't eat McDonald's very often. But it's that act of, it was taken away from me as a choice, and now I really, really want it. And what's important to understand from your business is, what is it that people are craving right now that they can't have, that you can start to reintroduce to them, and also introduce to them perhaps in a different way to what it was previously. So it doesn't have to be exactly as it was previously, but how can you stimulate that same emotion, that same feeling, by giving them something that they haven't been able to have? And that's going to need for you to adapt as a brand in the way that you work and the way that things are different. We're entering into a space where hyper-personalisation will be key and critical. So the way in which that you reach out to people and it feels just for them is really important. We had this with a company called Gum Gum, who wanted to reach out to McDonald's because that was their target market. And this is something that they did where they sent all of the key decision makers there a hyper-personalized hamburger that showed the ingredients of Gum Gum's solution as a different part of a Big Mac. And even the receipt that was in the box had the person's name on it that it was going to show that they'd been produced just for them. So they hit all of the key decision makers in the McDonald's process, and as a result, they managed to secure their business. Now that's a big business on a big scale, but you can think about how that can happen with your target markets or with your customers, because they're just as important to you if you secure those big and important deals. So have a think about how can you make your products and solutions so personalized that people are taken back in shock as to how much that's just for them. And content, we've been using content massively in this last few months as we've had nothing else to do. Certainly the furloughed people have sat there and really embraced this. But what we're looking at now is a switch in that content, so a slightly different type of content now, which is about inspiring us towards our next purchases and our next things that we want to do. It's the next break that we want. It's the nice things that we miss in our lives. We want to plan ahead, and we want people to take us on that journey with us, with them. So that's what people will be looking for. Red Bull do it fantastically. Their content is so extreme. and their support of extreme sports really matches well with their brand. And now more than ever, it's time to have a look at what is that customer journey looking like in your business. It may be that it needs to be a very different type of customer journey, and experiencing along that journey, what are the touch points in which you need to be hitting a customer at the right point in time, with the right message on the right device, to make sure that the experience that they get is one that they enjoy. Because we have such a short attention span now. We are literally looking at an advert capturing our attention within 5 seconds as we scroll through our feeds, as we find what we're looking for on YouTube or our social network of choice. So we have to really hit home with the right touch points at the right time, and making sure those customer journeys are mapped out specifically to make customers enjoy them. Whether they're a prospect or an existing customer, it needs to be seamless and it needs to be differentiated in order for you to be able to justify what it is that you offer as the leading choice. And of course, we've now got a new office. You know, I can't remember the last time I saw someone in a shirt. If they did, they probably had their pajama bottoms on from the waist down anyway. So, you know, we enter this new norm, and actually some people have got used to this. They've become much more productive. I think if we would have tried to move the UK to a digital working solution, it would have taken years. But guess what? We got forced into this by this situation, and we've embraced it. And actually some people are more productive now than ever before. And I think some businesses have been really taken back by how they can make that happen in their worlds. And I think that will make a difference. We will see people in the office less. I think you may see it switch the other way, that people working from home was seen as something that we did on an off day if we had to get our head down, or we perhaps did it one day a week. You might see the reverse of that, where people only use an office every now and again when they need to get together. But most of the things we can do on Zoom or Teams or whatever your solution is that you want to choose from. Hopefully some of you had shares in Zoom, because in December they had 10 million users. They're now over 300 million. So what a business to have a share in. And I think we'll start to see that used more and more. People I'm speaking to and the brands that we're talking to are saying, do we really need to go into that office? Do we really need to travel in order to have that meeting? And sometimes the whites of the eyes is needed, but I think you will see a lot more virtual work. So how is your brand geared up to deal with that, both internally with your staff, but also with your customers, your prospects, the way in which you interact with your people? Of course, what comes next? We don't know if we will go into a recession, and if we do, how long and how deep that will be for. It's perhaps something we don't want to think about, but it's probably going to happen, some form of it at least. So if we go into recession, people's behaviors will change dramatically. There will be a much greater reduction in people's spend, although I think people have been prepared for this quite nicely in lockdown, because they've reduced really their outgoings. And what we're seeing is that radical indulgence and that guilty pleasure becoming much more appropriate for people. So they might, you know, order their favorite meal from their restaurant and get it delivered to their home and have it there instead. They might interact through a Zoom meeting with something like Secret Sofa, as opposed to going to an event. So what's happening is there's going to be a some degree of recession. We're in our second quarter of negative growth anyway, and June's nearly over. So we're going to have a recession of some kind. Really, we need to be thinking about how our brands can adapt and adjust to the ways in which customers are going to be thinking in this period of time. Of course, the next 6 to 8 weeks will be critical for this. You know, we could see massive redundancies across the UK as brands start to come back together again and businesses start to operate. They'll have new strategies and new plans, because we're going to be faced with this period where things are going to be a little bit different for some time. So we're going to have to cut the cloth. There's also going to be very different experiences required. So really gear your brand up for that. And what it will mean from a customer's perspective is very different buying cycles. So unless you're in that 5% of hyper rich people, this will affect you. So you will need to be in those outer areas of that loyalty matrix that we looked at earlier. And I would advocate that you look at the data comparisons of things that are happening in the world as well. So, you know, we are weeks or months behind other countries in the world. Looking at what's going on in other countries enables you to be flexible in your approach as to what's coming down the track, rather than waiting and reacting when it does. Because as night follows day, we are going to go through these same cycles that other countries have gone through that are further advanced in this cycle that we are. So understanding what's coming down the path and then changing your approach as a brand, much more proactive, and also enables you to take your customers and your prospects on that journey by being at the forefront of what's next. Because when they're in that shock phase of we don't know what's coming, you being able to guide them by looking at data and analysis is really key, really critical. And this period will definitely create new opportunities. And I've taken people back to looking at what is happening with regards to similarities to, for instance, what happened in 2014 when the tubes went on strike. A much shorter, a much smaller phase in terms of what happened then, because it only happened for a number of days, a couple of days at most. So what happened though when those tube strikes happened is that we ended up where 5% of those customers never went back to using the tube because they were forced to find a new way of getting to work. And actually when they were forced to find that new way of getting to work, they actually enjoyed it more. And I think what we're going to get in the next, in the coming months is we're going to get experiences that push people into this new norm, and actually they're going to prefer it and stick with it. So there are going to be niche opportunities for people to look at how they can supply and how they can become the brand of choice for people in their new norms, rather than going back to what they were in before. And of course, we're going to end up with this second wave. The second wave is inevitable until we get a vaccine. So how are you geared up as a business to be able to support that second wave? Because when it comes along, don't be in that reaction phase again. You need to be in a position where you're able to have planned for the second wave in just the same way that getting through the first wave was really challenging as well. So make sure you've got a plan. Make sure you've got a strategy for how to approach that, because it's going to be important for you to survive that second wave until that vaccine comes along. Whether that will be October, whether it'll be the winter, who knows? It will be coming, because we've seen it in the data from what's happening in other parts of the globe. So again, just a reminder to have a look at this loyalty matrix, really understand where you sit in it, so that you can start to plan how to affect yourselves in the very outer corners of that. So when it comes to developing your plan, what should you be thinking about? Well, we talked about Me Too brands. The way we differentiate is by asking some key questions to CEOs and MDs that we work with. So something along the lines of, do you hold a position in the market that is uniquely yours? Are customers able to get the solution elsewhere? Do you solve a specific problem that no one else can? Or do you do something in a way that others don't do? Because that's what's going to make you stand out as that brand. And very, very important, especially if we go into a recession where we're going to be spending less and we're going to be giving our share of wallet in a much smaller way. We're going to our expendable outgoings are going to be smaller. So if you want a share of that smaller market, you're going to need to stand out. You're going to need to offer something different. We do something with our customers. We've got a product called Branding a Day, which is where we define the brand strategy in just 24 hours. So if people want to know more about that, it's something we've introduced. We've got a really affordable model for brands to approach this with, where they can do a virtual program over the next 6 weeks to really get their brand strategy clear, or we can do a one-to-one workshop with their brand. We will be doing live events for Branding a Day as well, which is 3 consecutive days of 8-hour days, which takes you to that 24 hours where we get all of your brand strategy clear so that you can attack your market and stand out. So finally, for the Festival of Enterprise, what I've done is looked at providing some solutions. And with an audience of this size, what we're really looking at now is offering, I've probably got space for about three people to review their brand strategy as it stands right now. So if that's something that you want us to look at to see where you're sitting in this whole enterprise solution right now, these are 3 questions that I'd like you to answer and tell me a little bit more about your business. So my email address is there at the bottom of the screen. It's craig@beyondbrandgroup.com. If you can answer, what's the biggest challenge you face right now with your business growth? Who's your target market? And what makes you different from your competitors? I'll choose the best 3, and then I'll reach out to those people and set up a strategy session that we'll do free of charge for you to review your brand and your brand strategy. So that takes me to the end of my presentation, Alex. I don't know if you've had some questions that we want to work through now at this stage.
Hi, Craig. Yeah, thank you very much indeed for that. I will refocus the screen on your good self and bring me up as well. Just close down your video. Can't see you at the moment, but we can hear you.
Oh, let me see if I can sort that for you.
In the meantime, I will work up through. Oh, there you go. It just says reconnecting. There you go. Brilliant.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's all right. Yeah, so one that's literally just pinged in. I'll go straight to that one as it's the most current one. Tom says, I'd love to hear your view. Some companies are thriving by pivoting their brand image, but some big ones are falling, include banking firms, clothing brands. What is the most significant difference? I thought something to do with listening to the customer's voice and trust, not only influencing or differentiating. It seems something more is needed, e.g. sending the authentic message, making customers special, not making themselves special. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. Pivoting for the sake of pivoting is not what we would advise. We would say stick with what your brand purpose is, because your brand purpose is what's made your brand who it is today. So it's okay to pivot in terms of move a solution, so long as it fits with what your external view is to the world. So if you are if you are a business like Barber and you produce quality goods, to do that for the NHS shows that you care. It doesn't show that you've pivoted because you need to sell some stuff. So it's more about making sure the purpose is right, rather than it being driven by a mode of profit. It needs to be something that is about adding value and pivoting to use your skill set in a way that people will find a use for, as opposed to it being profit driven. Yeah, no, I agree, and I've spoken to a number of businesses that have been able to pivot, and hence the beauty of being an SME, being agile and lean enough to do that, whereas you see some of these big boys really floundering in the current time because they're just too slow to move, aren't they? Yeah, and I think some brands have really done themselves no favors at all. Tom mentioned the banks that there's a massive span of experience difference across the banks, huge difference across the banks, from certain banks that literally were there to support businesses within hours, versus banks who still haven't got the capability of dealing with bounce back loans now.
Yeah.
So there's businesses that fall into that in real variances, and I think those that look after you right now will keep that loyalty, because we're going through that real trauma phase. So really great flexible businesses. Seen a lot of that in the mortgage market, where people are extending payment holidays, making terms easier for people. They're certainly not attacking that in a aggressive manner. So that's important for us to see that. But yeah, there's a big diversity across all of the brands as people take their approach. But you've got to remember as well, I know it's easy from our point of view, they're going through this shock as well. So, these huge tankers of businesses need to all of a sudden have thousands of people working from home, doing roles that they said could never be done at home, but they're being done. So you've got fraud roles being done at home. You've got all sorts of different things that are being done in a way that people just never imagined they would have been doing, and it's forced us to do that. So I think it's about communication. Communication is really key to get it right with your audiences, because even if you are struggling right now to adapt to this new norm, but you explain and you communicate well, your customers will go on that journey with you. They just need you to communicate well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the commonalities that have come out of some of the webinars that I've hosted, with the likes of an Alan Barrett from Grenade, or Piers Linney from Dragon's Den. And it's, communication is key. And even if, like, a number of businesses still aren't open, obviously, my wife's got a beauty salon, for example, and they all thought they were opening July the 4th. Now, there's been a fall back on that, and they're now not opening then. And the same for gyms, which were all lined up, ready to go. And it's tricky, but I think, if you are able to communicate with people, that when they do reopen, you're going to be at the forefront of people's minds, aren't you? And if you dealt with that in the right manner, over communicate rather than under communicate, surely.
Yeah, and as long as it's with the right intent.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, what we have seen is the pandemic. The nearest we've been to a pandemic is a recession. Yeah. So we've never been through a pandemic before, so we don't really know how to behave through it, or what works or what doesn't work. The beauty of a recession is that we've got history and data and facts that we can look at that say, all right, in the past, when people did it this way in a recession, it worked. So what we do know is that brands who stop their marketing and their messaging and their contact with customers, even in a recession, if they stop that, they suffer a downturn even when times return to being good.
Yeah.
And those companies who keep their marketing budget in place, it must feel like sometimes the most unnatural thing to do, to not slash your marketing budget. But if you can keep the faith that if you do that and you provide that marketing budget, but you spread it differently and use it differently, when the times that do return to good, you will benefit massively from that. We've seen brands that would deliver an uplift of 4 or 5 times the market, because they've kept front of mind and they've gone through that journey with a customer. The beauty of it is that marketing is probably going to cost less to do in this period of time as well. So especially if you stick to more solid ROI examples like search marketing and such. So you'll see less TV advertising. You've seen a massive slash in budgets for TV advertising And I think that those kind of things are going to be difficult, but you're still going to see a lot of opportunity to market your brand. It's just about changing the shape of your budget so that it's still relevant, but it's used in different ways.
Yeah, I remember, I think Grenade's a great brand to use it again, but chatting to Al Barrett, and that was a question we had with a panel was, have you slashed your budget? And he said, no, we've just reassigned it. We'd spent a couple of years getting everything, all of our products right as close to the tills as possible. And he goes, and then this happened. And instead, we've just thrown it all into digital marketing because everyone's just going D2C instead. And he said, we've seen 300% increase in sales with Grenade. So just a quick question we had here, Craig, is what's the best platform to use? And I suppose it depends where your customers hang out, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, there is no right and wrong answer in this, but certainly you're absolutely right where your customers are and their chosen platform. I mean, the more you know about your customers right now, and the more in touch you are with them, the more you can listen to them, the more you're going to be there as a brand that supports them. So my advice is to talk to them where they want to be talked to. Whether that's online, whether that's face-to-face, whether that's over the phone, whatever it may be, it really depends upon the size and scale of your business and where your customers are. But one thing that I can't overemphasize enough is to avoid not contacting them. Because they'll see that as a message of, you're only there when you want me to buy something. So what you need is somebody who's there and cares, a bit like the Nivea example that we saw in that presentation.
And somebody's asked, can you give a bit more information about your brand in a day? And I'm assuming that's an online offering at the moment, and then that might change in the future. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing the brand in a day product without packaging it really for years. So our customers have asked us to create a brand proposition, and we help them, guide them through. We've got 14 different stages that we take a brand through to make sure that they are delivering all of those key elements, like their USP, their message, their strategy to market. So we've been doing that for years anyway. But what I decided to do before the pandemic came around was that how can we create that into a package? Because Beyond Brand is all about trying to give those larger SMEs the same toolkit that the big guys use and the big brands that I've worked with in the past. So I was going to break that down into a 3-day workshop that we would do over 8 hours. We've got a number of people in the room who specialize in creative, in copywriting, in digital. So you've got all the experts in one room. And we would have up to 12 businesses at a time that go through that with us. And we literally knock out the strategy within 24 hours. But it's not a course. It's not something you go on to learn. We are walking through those modules with you, and you are building your strategy whilst you're going through it. So it takes, at the end of it, in fact, the last module that we go through is you pitching your new brand strategy to the rest of the group before you go back to your business, and then pitch it to your board or your stakeholders or whoever else it is that you need to gain approval from. And then, of course, we were just about to launch that in the autumn, and then the pandemic hit. So as with all of the businesses, it forced us to think about doing it differently. But having seen some of the great examples of people doing similar things online, we decided that we wanted to take a similar approach. So we've got now a 6-week program that we're going to do virtually with just a maximum of 12 businesses at a time, and that first virtual program will go live the first week in August. So we're now taking people onto that, and it's a really affordable solution. Whereas building a brand is quite an expensive thing to do. This is something that you know is a £3,000 ticket price, and we've even put in place a payment plan for businesses. So they've got 6 payments of £600. They can spread it across. So they've got their strategy in place coming out of this pandemic. Because I think brands have got 2 key questions at the minute. The first one is, how do we return to work, or how do we reopen our business in a safe way, so that our customers can have and experience our brand again, and so that our employees can also have a safe experience. So that's number one on everybody's agenda. How can we reopen in a safe way? And once you've got that bit covered, the next big question is our strategy still relevant in this new norm? Are we geared up for success in the next 18 months, because things have changed and will continue to change? So the branding a day process is about how can we really quickly get our strategy in place and be ready on the front foot when we reopen, come out of lockdown, we're ready to go, and we're going to hit the ground running, because, as you said, those opportunities will be smaller. There'll be less opportunities for the brands to share. You've got to make sure your brand's on that front foot.
Yeah, and there will be opportunities, but like you say, you've got to have your eyes open and your ears open and ready to take advantage of that. So just wrapping up, got time for one more question. Got a question here from Steve. He says, I'm looking to launch a brand new brand in the food and drink space. Any tips for a startup? What should I be focusing on over the next 3 months?
Wow.
Big one, I know.
Well, what a time to be launching a brand. Right now is a really tricky period. It's a really competitive market. Yeah, I mean, as you said, Alan Barrett, who's a great guy, know Alan really well. You know, how are you going to launch a brand in this current space? It's going to probably be a longer burn. It's going to probably be more direct marketing than normal, and it's going to probably be an approach where you're going to need to look at a B2C or a D2C solution, as well as any partnerships that you're looking to get into in terms of key retailers, because retailers have got a lot on their mind right now. If you're looking at a supermarket or even independent stores, they've got a lot to think about. Pitching a new product to them is going to be really, really difficult. So my advice for a new food or drink brand is really think about your direct consumer proposition as part of your initial opening, and start to learn about them in a way a bit similar to what we found with people like Dollar Shave Club. Start to learn more about them by building that relationship in that community first.
Awesome. And easiest way people to get hold of yourself and be on brand, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I've put my email address, I guess, in that last slide that we'll have for those people who want to book those strategy reviews. So if you've got a question that's outside of the norm, then certainly, you know, best place to get me is on my email, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Craig McVoy at LinkedIn, and I'll be able to answer your questions through the chat on there as well.
Brilliant. I'm just bringing up your LinkedIn now, which I've got, so people watching the replay will be able to see that, the last thing they see. So I'm just going to copy and paste that in there. Thanks for the nice comments. Miss, really enjoyed today's session. We'll email LinkedIn to set up a meeting, Craig. Very good. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I've just posted up there's LinkedIn for Craig, likewise mine. Always happy to connect with everybody who is on these webinars with me as well. And just to let you know, next one is coming up in just an hour. We are talking rethinking customer retention and loyalty in a post-COVID world. That's with me here at 12 p.m. Thanks, Craig. Thank you, everybody who's watched this, whether it's been on here or on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. And again, those of you who are going to watch this on the replay as well. Craig's LinkedIn profile is there. We can connect with him. And also you'll have all his details there, following up on an email from me for everybody who registered as well. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Alex, for today. Have a great day, everyone, and get out in the sunshine.
Indeed. Cheers, Craig.
All right, take care, everyone.
Bye now.